And that's how I take it And is this working? Yeah. Very good. As you can see, I've done an editorial change to the title. Cybercriminals, politicians, and bureaucrats will get possibly go wrong. Is that working here? All right, they're working. Hello. I'm Mike Daugherty, and I'm the CEO of LabMD, which is now, as everyone in the press likes to call, a defunct medical laboratory. But I'm from Detroit. I live in Atlanta. Came from a law enforcement family. Got a degree in economics. For some bizarre reason, ended up immediately working in surgery for 20 years, selling devices, and then I founded LabMD, which is a medical laboratory that does cancer diagnosis. And what I'm going to talk about is how some of my background ended up standing here, talking about what I consider to be the FTC playbook, which is an agency playbook that no one wants people to understand. Agencies, as I learned the hard way, and I want you all to know so you don't have to learn it the hard way, have an amazing power that just never will be taught you in a civics class. And so this is sort of the main thing we want to know. LabMD did blood, urine, tissue analysis for prostate cancer and bladder cancer. Very specialized in the fact that we use special software to organize physicians' offices. We were a pretty early adopter, tiny, 40 employees, and 700,000 patients in the database. And we had the top 2 pathologists in the world who read more prostate tissue to analyze. So that whole world of cancer analysis is about pathologists that have an expertise in treating one type of cancer. So there we were, a lowly, small medical laboratory in a vertical market, minding our own business, wanting to stay private, not go public, and just do good work. And as we all know in cybersecurity, we're only as strong as the weakest link. And one day someone thought we had a weak link. But I also know that in cybersecurity, as I know now, we are basically to this day, and I actually think we're on the other side of the curve. I love listening to all these speakers and what everyone else knows in the room now about that really there is no such thing as perfect cybersecurity. And we don't freak out at breaches, but that's not the world that I was born into. This saga about LabMD, the Federal Trade Commission, actually started in 2008. And what we had was a mob mentality. We have mob mentalities in some issues of this country right now, but it is in cybersecurity, there's something extreme. People tend to wake out and group together, and the best example is the Salem witch trials, and there's a majority mentality. Has anyone ever seen I forget the guy's name. There's some comedic thing about the witch when they all group together to kill the witch, and they're just making up all this stuff about her. What was that?
Monty Python.
Monty Python. If you haven't seen Monty Python and the Witch, you got it. It's phenomenal. She's a witch. She's a witch. No, she's a witch. Anyway, so what happens when in the outside of the judicial system, when you're accused publicly, everyone assumes you may be guilty until proven innocent, and so suddenly it's goodbye. And this is what we face. And everyone then is in their survival mode within their own organizations. So it's like, well, where's the blame going? I really hope it's not coming here. That's really what I'm concerned about. So you guys, I would think, probably should care about this other than roadkill entertainment, because August 1st, 2006, the FTC overturned their own judge and issued a sweeping new opinion. This is what got everyone's attention in the media, in the law world, in the corporate world, other than look at this entertaining fight out in Atlanta and DC. Section 5 of the FCC Act, they said vulnerable or exposed data is now considered to be an unfair business practice. Does anyone see the word breach up there? And the FTC is determining to rule a company's security practices were unreasonable or likely to harm consumers even without tangible harm. That means, and I can't make this up, this was my life. You're standing there and the judge said to the FTC lawyer, you mean that an intangible harm of just having the fear of your data being used is a tangible harm? Yes, Your Honor. And then the press came up to me after and said, is that what they said? I don't understand it. And they just, people think they don't hear the Alice in Wonderland things that come out of a government lawyer's mouth. And so now I'll talk about the autopsy of LabMD, because LabMD is really just a defunct company now, right? So in 2000, because I'm going to cram 10 years into 40 minutes here, so keep up. 2008, 2009, we were hacked. 2010 to 13, the FTC investigation. 14, 15, administrative law trial, which is the FTC's own court, and the congressional investigation. 16, 17, the FTC overturns their own judge, and we finally end up in the Court of Appeals. And this is the track we're going on. So in 2008, innocent little company, phone rings. The guy says, "Hi, my name is Robert Bobick. I'm the CEO of a company called Tyversa. Tyversa does cyber investigation, cyber assistance. And we found one of your files out in cyberspace. And who are you? Prove it, send it to us." He sent it, 9,000 patients in one PDF file. How'd you get it? What's the IP address? You'll have to open a contract with us. Oh, that's interesting. How much is that? $40,000. Drop dead. Because we don't roll like that in healthcare even today. But our whole differentiation of the company was that we were IT different than the big labs. So I had pretty sharp people there that was like, this is just bogus. Now, knowing it's bogus versus proving it's bogus are two different things. And you gotta prove it. So here we are in 2008, and we got 9,000 patients fully. Now, back in that day, I was like, oh my God, what's going on? How is this possible? We're young, we're new. And he says, well, you know, we focus on peer-to-peer. So we start looking, and sure enough, we find LimeWire on the Office Manager software workstation, and she is using LimeWire. Interesting fact, it was installed in 2005. She started working at the company in 2007. We never know to this day how we got there. The FTC doesn't investigate that fact. Never in a million years did we think we'd have to go to these details back then, because who would have thought, oh, this little thing that's happening where we have no wounded patients is going to destroy your company, change your life, move your career. So you know, there's all sorts of hindsight things we didn't do in the background, and the FTC was doing the investigation on us. And when the government's investigating you, believe me, your lawyers are saying, don't go investigate. You're just helping them. So everyone assumes you're guilty, including your own lawyers. And she was gone. We scoured the internet, we scoured peer-to-peer networks, we scoured every workstation. We got rid of that workstation, we got rid of her. Quickly. It was against policy. It was, but who back 10 years ago didn't think, well, I'm just listening to music, what could I possibly be doing wrong? And we still don't know how that one file got in there. She had a My Documents folder, inadvertently shared with LimeWire, with 900 files, 875 of them are music. 24 of them are files with no patient. This is the one file in the entire system that's vulnerable to peer-to-peer. Okay. This is me back then, thinking, I work with Health and Human Services, and I come from a law enforcement family, and I just love regulators and government, because everyone I know has been honest and fantastic, and that's what we just stupid. Sorry. All right. So the FTC calls up in January 2010 because we wouldn't pay Mr. Bobick, and he said in 2008, we're going to turn this over to the FTC. And I'm like, go ahead, do it. And he did, because the FTC called in January and said, we have received a file, and we won't tell you from who or where. And I was like, we know. And we're going to start a non-public investigation. Now, again, I was stupid. Today, I'll tell you, if the government knocks on your door, you're dead. You're dead. So they're not your friends, period. Okay, so lawyer up and don't talk. So they put out this press release, because this is how they talk. Widespread data breaches uncovered by FTC probe. FTC warns of improper release of sensitive consumer data on P2P file sharing networks. The Federal Trade Commission has notified almost 100 organizations that personal information, including sensitive data about customers and our employees, has been shared. All these words are really important to notice now, because we'll see how different they speak 5 years when their next press release comes out. So what happens is, okay, I know I'm one of those companies, mommy, because who's going to believe a CEO that says I didn't do it when you've got all this patient data? So I'm trying to figure out who the heck the FTC is, because I've been in medicine for 27 years and no one's ever said that word in their life to anyone. Doctors, hospitals, no one knows the FTC is. We know who Health and Human Services is. That's who inspects us. That's who licenses us. That's who, criticizes and supports us. And we got along great with them, because they were full of regulators that were educated in medicine. Wasn't aware of that either. Why we got along so well with them. These guys are just lawyers. And the FTC Section 5, made in that exciting year of 1914, so relevant to today. It says, protecting the consumer from unfairness and deception. An act or practice is unfair where it causes or is likely to cause substantial injury to consumers, cannot be reasonably avoided by consumers, and is not outweighed by countervailing benefits to consumers or to competition. That's great, except they get to make up all the definitions. They decide what is likely, what's substantial, what's an injury, what's reasonable, and this is the part that's it's a game of the constantly moving goalpost. And if you're in science and technology, welcome to hell, because all you got is taffy and moving goalposts. So I'm trying to figure out who is the genius that started this whole thing, because it wasn't Barack Obama and it wasn't George Bush, and at the time that's all anyone wanted to talk about. So I found out that Woodrow Wilson is the man who started the administrative state, basically. He's an academic. He's trying to stop politicians from running the new industrial revolution and the medical revolution, and is trying to get expertise. So good intentions. Unfortunately, he's also a very arrogant academic and thought the foundation and the structure of the United States was something we'd already grown out of. And that these founding fathers bringing these branches together, these are separation of powers. There's a purpose to separate the executive, judicial, and the legislative branch is snapped in two to even give more obstacles to putting laws on our back. He didn't like that. He thought, these people don't need accountability. They're academic professionals. They are really going to be fine. And so they have make their own laws, which they call rules. They have their own courts, and you have to go through that maze to get to the courts that are in our mind now, and that is not taught in a civics class. So I was as dumb as a wall, going, you got to be kidding me. So the hand is a fist, and I can get in trouble for having 9,000 patients taken by this guy who my people say know that he just stole this thing and that's it, but because it might be floating out there in cyberspace and we don't have a single victim, we can get, yes. I'm like, wait a minute. So I can get hit for murder when there's never been a bullet that's left the gun? Yes. Okay. So I decided I'm going to start writing all this down to educate people. So we get called to DC, we go meet them with my lawyers, and it's terrifying, and I have to go super fast about this. But basically we leave going, holy crap, we're in deep you-know-what. And these bureaucrats have scant experience in what they're regulating, nor do they care. They treated us like we were just, it was like a TV series where there was a smoky glass. They were so serious, they kept asking the same questions over and over and over. Like I thought, either these guys are stupid, or they're just trying to trip us up. They were just so full of themselves, like nothing's happened. But like I said earlier, I realized we were in deep trouble because these guys they wouldn't tell us what we did wrong, and they didn't tell us what we did right. Now, I thought there's something wrong with that, no way. But burn that in your brains. They actually bank on that and litigate that they don't have to tell us. And I'll go back and do that later. So I left, having being the oldest son in Detroit of a guy that did inspected homicide and ran homicide. And me and my mother, who was a police officer, my whole life is with what I consider to be very professional investigators and judges and lawyers. And this crowd was like a TV series. I was mortified. I'd never seen anything like this. I just thought this was, the con is on, you're guilty till proven innocent, and we're just going to build this around you. So here's what I learned from this guy in Harvard. I'm going to read this, because this sums up the whole molasses. The Federal Trade Commission promulgates substantive rules of conduct. The Commission then considers whether to authorize investigations into whether Commission's rules have been violated. The Commission authorizes an investigation. The investigation is conducted by the Commission, which reports its findings to the Commission. If the Commission thinks that the Commission's findings warrant an enforcement action, the Commission issues a complaint. The Commission's complaint that a Commission rule has been violated is then prosecuted by the Commission and adjudicated by the Commission. This Commission adjudication can either take place before the full Commission or before a semi-autonomous Commission, administrative law judge, that's what we had the joy of, If the commission chooses to adjudicate before an administrative law judge rather than before the commission, and the decision is adverse to the commission can appeal to the commission. If the commission ultimately finds a violation, then and only then the affected private party can appeal to the Article III court. But then the agency decision, even before the Article III tribunal, which is your court of appeals, the courts that we're used to hearing about in public, possess a very strong presumption of correctness on matters both of fact and law. So that means they get to stack the deck, they get to make their own rules, they get to run you through a torture chamber, and then after the dump that, if you haven't settled because you really want to live, the judges have to side with them and give them the benefit of the doubt. Do you remember this in civics? Me either. I'm so glad I found this. Because people doesn't believe it. This came from this guy at Harvard, Gary Lawson. I wish I would have found it years before. Because what I really realized, like, holy cow, villainy wears many masks, none more dangerous than the mask of virtue. These guys think they're saving us like crazy. Behind the scenes, they're killing a 700,000 patient cancer detection center. And I'm not alone. And it really is nuns with guns. Because they're just so helpful. They're just amazing. Saving the world, praise the Lord. And here comes the U.S. government coming in to save the world. Here they come, down on LabMD, because we're diagnosing cancer, and that has got to stop. So they want us to settle. Because this company, you'll hear this before, right? Just sign the consent decree. What they wanted was us to sign a consent decree so that we could get inspected by them for 20 years at our expense, and then they go away now. And almost all the companies sign this, because if you're a major corporation, it's really taking the path of least resistance. Justice, due process, fair notice, forget it. It's settled to go away. But I was in a weird spot, because I have patience and a reputation, and just a consent decree alone would kill it. So they didn't understand me. And my lawyers wanted me just to be nice to them, but their version of getting along with them was just agreeing with every single thing they said. I wish I wasn't being extreme. Or else they'll bury you in procedures and data. And so I considered, at this time it's now come to my head, I'm like, this is not what I'm used to. This is what I call the 16th century head on a spike in London. We're going to pull some example out. We're going to do that to let the public know what they're supposed to do. We're going to use fear to do it. We're going to take LabMD and we're going to market them and the 37 other companies, and everyone else is going to learn through their corporate law department what you're not supposed to do, because Congress won't tell us what we're supposed to do. There's no real laws about what we're supposed to do. So we're going to see what happened to these people that got in trouble, and we're going to put all those things down, and that's how this agency's going to create law and tell you what to do. Welcome to hell. If you are running a 700,000 patient cancer detection center. Because no one really believes you. What happens is, CEOs sign, I'm not begrudging these people, because this is a survival question, but this is just a fact how it rolls in DC. Kick the can down the road to make them go away, and you think your problem's over, but they're not. Lawyers in DC infiltrate law firms and agencies advising. And you buy these high-powered lawyers who used to work in the agency because you think they've got an inside track. Your money goes to the agency where they continue to execute their agenda. Your name is held up as an example in congressional hearings for years to come. So you unwittingly help create more severe regulations without congressional involvement. So much for the make them go away. But I was in a unique spot. I was a backdoor. I knew it. Because it's a private company. I had the money. I had the time. I had the drive. But I also didn't have a choice, because I couldn't be... I knew I was in one of the rare situations where they couldn't exploit the fact that I didn't have fiduciary duty, I didn't have a board, I didn't have the SEC. I could really fight these guys and not lose a bad leg, and I thought I was going to be dead anyway. So the question for me was, die silently and everyone thinking that you did something wrong, or fight. So I fought. And I understood a few things. They just want everyone clueless of what's going on. There are no standards. I come from medicine where we have constantly changing standards, because medicine is constantly changing. And it works because we're educated. We constantly move. The human body is not static. That's true in technology. People don't get that. They're getting it more now. But the lawyers and bureaucrats and congressmen do not get it. And Congress isn't going to do anything, because they don't know how to get a political advantage from this. They can exploit medicine. They don't know how to exploit technology. So no one wants the hot potato, and all the agencies are walking in different directions in Washington with different rules, different standards. If you're in banking and medicine, you've got 3 different masters, they don't all disagree. I mean, they don't agree, but you've got to make them all happy. Make them unhappy because they're not going to care. So you have these, the gods, the rules are the different agencies depending on your industry. And the bottom line strategy is to exhaust you into submission so you're out of resources before you get to a fair and impartial court. A court that they don't have their finger in the pie. That's the district court, federal courts, court of appeals, Supreme Court. You have to go through their own court first, should they choose to put you there. And the laws and rules from the other branches of government say, over the 20th century, that process cannot get interrupted till it's finished. So that's like saying, we're going to put you in the Coliseum, we're going to let the lions out, we're going to sit in the stands, and as soon as the first 10 minutes are over, we'll jump in. Or else you can stop. So it's called steamroll. So I'm freaked out, I don't have a ton of money, I only have $250,000 of insurance for liability, I got $3 million insurance for malpractice. So I start researching and I find out, I've got to go real quick on this, Homeland Security, turns out they gave $24 million to Dartmouth in 2005, 6, 7 to research peer-to-peer leaks. Because well-intentioned, fine government employees are working from home, working on their kids' computers, doing work, and they're losing all sorts of big stuff, especially transportation. And so they want to know what's going on. Well, Dartmouth decides to call Bobbitt, the guy that's calling me, trying to extort me. So I start researching this, and I find that he is in front of House Oversight in 07 and 09, and Commerce, chatting away about peer-to-peer and how terrible it is and how we're losing everything. And he is working with Dartmouth. And in this study that we're paying for, 300 million to 1.8 billion searches per day, 4.5 million workstations worldwide they're monitoring, because they won't use the word surveil, 13.8 million files downloaded, and they put the LabMD file up in From House Oversight as an example. He did this 2 years before I even found out. And if you watch the tape, the congressmen are just sitting there. And there's a press release out about this. So this is a whole different time where people didn't get it. And then I find out he's also testifying with his advisory board member, General Leslie Clark. And he also has another advisory board member, Howard Schmidt, who's on that works for Obama in the White House, Cybersecurity. He's got all these cronies that have been sort of duped into working together. Pulling them in too. So it's a shakedown to get you to sign the consent decree, and I'm a pain in the butt because I'm one of the only CEOs basically, usually you get cake or death, and I got death or death. I had two choices. And I wouldn't take it. So I call in Ben Wright from Sands, who I don't know. He's the only lawyer I found in the country that criticized the FTC and said, whatever they're doing might look good, but it's not going to work. And he said that like in 07. So I fly him in, and I leave, and he analyzes everything, talks to him, and says, you don't have a breach. You've got a government-funded study with a government-funded actor breaking into your computer, taking the file, and the only place it is in control of the government. It's never been out of control. It's not floating. It's always with not a light source, but doesn't fit the legal definition. And my lawyers to this point have to change their head from Daugherty's nuts and needs to go on a long vacation, but thank God he's paying me, to, wow, maybe Daugherty's right. And that was painful for them. And then my lawyer, who used to work at the FTC in DC, says, angrily, they can always reopen the case. They can watch you forever. So and I'm like, whose side are you on? So she's pissed because she's not going to get me to sign the consent decree. And she just didn't believe me. She thought, yeah. So lambs are easy to slaughter is what I decided, because we found out that they were going after all these companies, but only picking on the small ones. Because we don't have the money to really fight. Big companies roll. Big companies, if it's a real big deal, have the resources to fight. Teeny doesn't, and they want to get in finance and healthcare, and so they went after us and a car dealership in South Georgia and an AIDS clinic in Chicago. And the whole thing is persecution through process. I'm going to fight this. I was going to have a long slog up Justice Mountain that we're going to be ignored by the law, the government, the media, and business, because that's what happened so far. So the game plan that I realized was the FTC creates common law, they get the consent decree, they build the precedent, they avoid the courts, they mislead and stonewall Congress, they play hero to the press. And everyone's settling, so no one knows. So it's the 21st century sort of torture chamber. You have to deal with this type of punishment when you fight back. Press releases, Twitter attention spans, diversion from business, negative financial impact, insurance claims, they canceled our insurance, law firms, and the Hall of Shame. They love the Hall of Shame. They love the Hall of Shame because everyone just thinks, I must have done something wrong. And that's everyone. Your employees, your landlord, your insurance carrier, the surgeons that order your stuff. Everyone's just like, and we were a real big target because we were killing Quest and LabCorp because we could just do things faster, better. So the big point I want you to get is you have to go, the agencies know this, not just the FTC. You can't get outside of their system till you go through all this stuff to the red line. And that's got bias. And that goes against what we're taught, so I want people to understand. And they have all these strategies. If they take you into their court, they get to drain you dry with time. They don't participate in the federal rules of civil procedure or the federal rules of evidence. They get to change things. They get to allow hearsay. The attorneys have privilege, so they use attorneys as investigators. So they have to tell you what they found in their own rules. They win 100% of the time, your reputation's gone, you get the message. But then there was one commissioner, Josh Wright, who was there for 2 years, and he did a study, and the bottom line is, he said, in the past 20 years, the FTC has ruled in favor of staff on appeal 100% of the time, win rate for antitrust claims appealing 50%. That means they always overturn the judge if he rules against them. So it's just another punishment process. So we end up the first time we end up in a real court, the first thing on the judge is, no one really litigated your authority in this area to do this, you've actually done none of it. Now we scream, we fight, and we know we're going to lose. I have pro bono defense at this point, cause of actions defending me for free in DC, and we're fighting things to show the system how really biased it is. Because if you just complain about it, no one believes it. But if you got a case and you can show it, then people believe it. And the judge said, sharp limited role court, I can't enforce, I have to let everything be done. I have to let the subpoena be honored. We basically have no power to stop this for now. So it's more steamrolling, it's more bullying, and I decide I'm going to write a book. Because the system, working inside the system is absolutely not going to work. Period. So at least I can go down screaming and yelling. And then they sue us. They're furious about this. They march into court saying, we're really upset about the book. And my lawyer says, well, that's 20 free copies we just saved. I guess when we're signing them. I like the fact he was selected. But the FTC files complaint against LabMD for failing to protect privacy. The commission alleges exposure. Notice how the press release changes now. It's just exposure. And so there's no sure people think you're guilty, and they overturn the whole company. They subpoena 40 people, doctors, nurses, vendors, employees that were there 6 years before, IT people long gone, my assistant. And then we go to court, and the judge says to the FTC, before the FTC trial, what are you doing to tell companies what they're supposed to do? And on the record, the FTC says, there is nothing out there for me to look to. Now I put that in quotes because if I run around saying, they don't tell you what you're supposed to do, who believes that? I would believe that. So more steamrolling. And Health and Human Services put out a letter saying we did nothing wrong because everyone thinks it's HIPAA. Health and Human Services. We had no obligation to do anything. We did not violate HIPAA. But people were thinking we violated HIPAA and not saying it. Because I could see no one would want to really help us. It's like, it got out. Something happened. So LabMD closes in 2014 because couldn't get new people, no people were jumping. Senior management was moving back to their prior employers. But my book started to draw ink, and a whistleblower came out on April 14th, and I'm going to have to turn this on to super high speed, folks. The whistleblower is Rick Wallace. Here he is the year before getting his award from Bob Mueller because he had FBI access and top secret security clearance, and he was doing child porn investigations out of Pittsburgh FBI. And they had no idea what he was doing with that FBI software, was breaking into computers all over the country. Goldman Sachs, Coca-Cola, Prudential. Have you heard that in the media, by the way? It's only been public since the hearing in 2015. So he says that everything he's been doing is going in and stealing files, and with the child pornography data they're taking from the Pittsburgh Project, they're taking the metadata applying it to the files that are still inside the computer. LabMD's data was never floating out there. He broke in, he took it, he edited it, and then he scares everyone. And they do this with companies all the time. They get massive contracts, and the FTC believed it, hook, line, and sinker. And the FTC then told them to create a false company to funnel the files to the FTC because they didn't want to be publicly known to cooperate with them. So they created a false company called the Privacy Institute. I mean, it was a real company. It was false. The purpose of its being formed was a lie. And all it was a place where the government could give it a subpoena and they could send them through there to hide where this data originated from. More steamroll. So the whistleblower also said, the big thing that got Congress all whipped up about this wasn't what happened to us. It's that in this scam, they found Barack Obama's Marine One helicopter planes. And they told the whole world they were from Iran. And I don't know if you remember this, it was on NBC News, all over the press. Obama was president for 9 weeks. And it was a lie. It was all a lie. You guys remember the press telling you that it was all made up, right? And that the FBI got completely duped. And that no one did anything about it once we knew. You remember all that, right? Old story, sorry. So everybody in Washington, when you screw up like a bunch of phones, you want everyone to shut up. So now we go to court, and the judge says, you've got no information to establish how this evidence was obtained. That's correct. So they say they have no evidence. You don't know where the evidence came from. You don't know how these people got possession of it. You don't know whether they originated from LabMD or some other place, but you're going to use that to show these certain individuals are damaged by documents they don't source, you know, which you don't even know. Yes, Your Honor. Holy cow. Notice how outrageous this is, and they don't stop. So he says, how does any company in the United States operate when they are trying to focus on what HIPAA requires and have some other agency parachute in and say, well, I know that's what they require, but we require something different. And they didn't stop. The court's going to stop them. So they're caught in a big corner because it's such a mess. And we go to the administrative law court now, and he says, you don't plan to introduce evidence. That's correct. I'm going to blow through this. This is kind of repetitive. The court's order provides that LabMD may not discover the standards the FTC has used in the past. So the FTC makes their own rules. Their rules say we can't know what their standards are. The judge has to enforce their rules. Therefore, we can't know what the law is. And they're all fine with that. And the media comes up to me after going, I couldn't have heard that put right. And they're like, it was crazy. They want to report it because it was so upside down. You get my message with the steamrolling. So Rick comes in to plead the fifth. We're trying to get him criminal immunity because he knows the whole story. And we go to Congress, and Congress doesn't want anyone to know. He brings in hard drives with top secret information. And Saxon Grooms, who's the head for the minority team at that point, which is the Democrats, and don't worry, Democrats, I'll be getting to the Republicans in a minute. These three have decided they want to cover this whole thing up. So you got a senator and the head of minority for House Oversight and the head lawyer for House Oversight not letting anyone look at the data or the files. And then you have Boehner and Jason Chaffetz on the Republican side not wanting to let anyone look because all these guys care about is their party getting blamed. So all this violation of national security, since the people supposed to protect us are screwing it up, that has to stay killed. And so it's the don't look so you won't find. So we have a hearing, but the media doesn't pay attention. Because they so vilified, really, ISA and the whole thing. So now, there's no investigative journalism, we'll go with this. Everyone's whistling past the graveyard. The DOJ comes in and gives him immunity. 6 months, now a year later, we finally get back to court. Rick has immunity, and he discusses that there's a quid pro quo relationship with Tyversa. Tyversa gives FTC companies to chase and prosecute. The FTC gives Tyversa companies so they can go close business. MetLife, $1 million. You guys heard that in the media, right? Yeah. So the judge says, a mere breach is all that's required for Section 5 violation. No, a breach is not what's required. So you're violating the law even without a breach. Sorry, CISOs. Have any evidence of anyone that was harmed? We did not present a consumer witness. This is the government's version of, oh hell no. That means, oh hell no, in government talk. So I'm going to skip over this stuff because we got to tie this up here. The FBI raided on the 16th, we're almost done here. March 1st, 2016, FBI raids Cybersecurity. I'm at RSA, hits Reddit, Twitter, then everyone, the news picks it up. And everyone thinks the LabMD won, but LabMD's dead, so there's no winning. They're just getting the story out. And then the FBI does everything, and the FTC just continues to move the goalposts and pulls everything back. And for some inexplicable reason, the FTC commissioners overturn their judge and say that, and they change the findings of fact, which they can do in the law, and the FBI closes the investigation a year later. And we FOIA'd the FBI investigation. They said they couldn't really do anything, they couldn't prove anything. It was a 445,000 page file. And we're still chatting about them wanting me to bring them the smoking gun. But they're only interested in the actual issue of the lies and showing that the CEO proved it. They're not really interested in the witness tampering. So everyone has jumped the shark. And then I'm free of the court process. So I'm excited. I'm going to be back into real court. And I'm going to skip over that because we're going to come down to Ropes and Gray comes in, and we end up at the Court of Appeals. Ropes and Gray is the biggest boutique cybersecurity firm in the world, and they handled Sony and Target and Wyndham and Home Depot, and they took my case up pro bono because this now is this ruling impacts everybody, me the least because I'm already dead. So what we do is we had the decision. This is a year. I'm going to top it up right now, but here's the decision. The 11th Circuit agreed that the FTC's order is unenforceable. Here's the big part. Must comport with requirement of reasonable definiteness. The entire agencies, all of them, want to keep definitions gooey, so you can be caught in a wider net. And they want to use the word reasonable. And in many parts of the law, that's okay. But in science and technology, there's no GUI like that. And they seem to think that they can't, that they have to have that, or things will change so much. But things change like that medicine all the time. So all we had here was the destruction of a medical. But the good thing is we're forcing the government now to be specific, because although they have all these resources going against, or letting you know what you're supposed to do to save us, as we've all observed, every year since 2000, we've had more data lost every single year. And 2019 will be worse than 18. So the authoritarian, do it because I say so, because I'm the government, doesn't work in this instance, especially when they won't tell you what it is you're supposed to do. And so, so actually it's worked out okay now, because I'm an entrepreneur and I'll do other things. The book's in TV series. It's called The Devil Inside the Bell. It's in TV series development. It's in, I get to talk and do things now and travel around the world. So, people moved on. And I think that's it, because he just waved at me. And if you got any questions, I'm around. But thank you for listening to why the government might have less power over you now.